From the groundbreaking original to the thrilling reboots, join me on a journey through the evolution of the Planet of the Apes franchise as I rank each movie from worst to best. Discover which films reign supreme in the epic saga of humanity, intelligence, and survival. Are you ready to embark on this cinematic adventure with me? What's happening, guys? Back at you with another video. So we got the most recent movie in the Planet of the Apes franchise with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes now in theaters. So after checking that movie out and just really enjoying this franchise overall, I definitely need to rank all of these movies in the franchise. But if you want to get a full in-depth review from me for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, definitely go check out my review on the channel now. So with this franchise of Planet of the Apes, this is definitely a special franchise where it spans over 50 years of just movies in the franchise, you know, dating all the way back to the 60s to today, present day, and still going strong, still going on and continuing on with these movies in this franchise. So this is definitely a franchise that is going strong and just continues to make an impact through all this time. Now, when it comes to the Planet of the Apes franchise, I really love the modern day trilogy that we got a couple years ago with the whole Caesar storyline that we got with that trilogy. I love that trilogy so much. It's one of my favorites, and it's just so awesome. I remember watching the original 2001 remake. Of course, I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but I remember watching that as a kid, and we'll get into that when the ranking starts, where I actually put that movie at. But upon this actual ranking, you know, making this ranking video, and before making this ranking video, I went back and watched all of the original Planet of the Apes films from 1968, I believe, to the early 70s. I actually watched all of those for the very first time. Now, I remember watching a couple of those when I was actually a kid, like just parts of them. I never really fully sat down to, you know, watch it from beginning to end. Any of those movies, I just remember seeing parts here and there of them as a kid, so I never actually watched through all of them. So this was actually my first time watching through every single movie, sitting down from beginning, watching it from beginning to end. So those will be in this ranking. This is ranking all of the 10 current movies that we have, you know, currently in the franchise. So let's go ahead and get into this ranking video. And coming in at the bottom for me is going to be Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Now, this is the sequel to the original Planet of the Apes from the 60s. And with this movie, it felt so weird watching this movie. Like, this movie felt like it just completely came out of left field. With like, it was just such a weird movie. And considering that it came right after the original Planet of the Apes movie, which is amazing and great. And we'll get into that in the future of the ranking video. But, like, to have a sequel that comes out after that original spectacle of a movie, and it was just like, where did they, like, why did they have this idea? Like, this movie is so weird. It just came out of left field for me. It was just like, I don't get this movie. Like, what is what is up with this movie? And it was just like, you know, you have this whole cult of people that are, like, you know, kind of living in the mountains and living underground and all that stuff, where they worship a nuclear warhead, and it's like their savior or whatever they call it, and it's just like they have powers or like sort of mutants in a way, and it's just weird. And, you know, Charlton Heston didn't really, well, he did come back for his movie. Technically, he's like in the last couple minutes of the movie, but that's about it. He didn't really want to come back for his movie. But just to have this movie is just so weird. It doesn't make too much sense. And the way that this movie just ends abruptly to where the nuclear warhead actually goes off, but you see no destruction, just shows it going off and just cuts to black. It's just a weird thing. And I kind of noticed this with the original Planet of the Apes movies, where a lot of these original Planet of the Apes movies honestly just cut to black, and it's like you are just like left hanging kind of in a way. But like this one was just completely weird, dealing with the cult of people living in the mountain and all that stuff, and it was just kind of weird to me, definitely. And getting into the number 9 spot, and that is going to be the 2001 remake, directed by Tim Burton. And when I say directed by Tim Burton, if you told me this was directed by Tim Burton, I wouldn't have guessed it at all without knowing prior that he actually did direct this movie. This movie kind of feels hollow to me, and it feels like it doesn't really have Tim Burton's certain style to it. Like, honestly, this movie just feels like it was just directed by any director. It doesn't really have the style of Tim Burton in this movie. and you don't really feel like he directed or put his style onto this movie. And it just felt like, I remember watching this movie as a kid. This was literally the first Planet of the Apes movie that I saw ever, like, basically. And when watching this as a kid, I honestly felt kind of this similar way, to where it's like, it's a watchable movie. It's a movie that I wouldn't really go back to or rewatch a whole lot. And that's kind of true, because this is, upon rewatching it recently again, that was actually my first time watching it in probably a good 15, maybe almost 20 years, to be honest. I really never went back to this film. I really had no good memories with this film, to where I just wanted to keep rewatching and rewatching it. I kind of had the same feelings I felt as a kid, to where it just feels hollow. It just feels like, it's not really a certain style that Tim Burton puts on this movie, and it feels like it's kind of directed by any director almost. And just some of the things that he was doing in this movie, like, I can understand how he was trying to kind of make it his own, but, like, change it and change some things about this remake, and not really copy the original masterpiece that we got. But, like, the things that he does and the changes that he does, and especially with the ending, I was confused as a kid on what the ending was. I'm still, after this most recent rewatch, I'm still kind of confused on exactly what happened, and everything that happened with that ending is just confusing with that ending. And the way that this movie felt like there was kind of like a love triangle going on a little bit, with Mark Wahlberg's character and one of the ape characters and one of the human characters, like this little love triangle kind of going on. It was kind of weird and stuff like that. And I will say that, some of the prosthetics that they use, I believe it's prosthetics they use, because I don't think it was CGI. But, like, prosthetics that they use, the makeup and everything looks amazing. It does look amazing still to this day, pretty good. And they're able to get those ape-like qualities and features on the actors and all that. So they did a really good job with that. And really, one of the things that was kind of weird to me was, like, towards the end, and, it's apes against humans pretty much throughout the whole movie. And then towards the end, when they have the battle, and then you have who they think is their, like, Lord and Savior, Creator, whatever you want to call them, Zemos, I believe it was pronounced. And it's just actually one of the regular apes that is with Mark Wahlberg's character in the beginning of the movie, and they believe he's the Lord and Creator and Savior of the ape kind and all that. And the way that he just comes down, and they're, like, accepting him, and then they just pretty much accept that apes and humans need to live together in harmony, and be able to, like, just live together and live alongside each other. And it just comes across as kind of abruptly, like, it's like, really, that's all it took for them to, like, just come together and realize that they just need to live alongside each other together and all that. I don't know, it's weird. This movie is definitely kind of weird, and it's definitely confusing at times, and I don't know, I just don't typically go back to rewatch it. Next up is going to be Battle of the Planet of the Apes, and with this one, I think this one is actually pretty good, or not. I don't want to say pretty good, but it's at least a decent watch. It's a watchable movie. Wasn't really bored with it. I was kind of interested on the things they're able to do, to where we definitely have Caesar, and he's like the leader of the apes now, and he has his son in there, and just kind of the controversy that goes on with, they have humans that live alongside with them, but they don't necessarily treat them as slaves. They just kind of live alongside with them, but they know that they're above, like, a level above humans. So they look down upon humans in a way, but they still, like, live alongside them and all that, and still have them around. And the way that this movie has some similarities to, like, Dawn of the Planet of Apes, to where we have a guerrilla general who is actually kind of against Caesar in a way. Like, he doesn't necessarily follow Caesar, to where he believes in his leadership or believes in his words that he foretells and all that stuff. And you kind of see that opposing forces going against each other, to where, they're kind of butting heads in a way, but you can see those dynamics between them and all that. And then you have this other race of humans that, comes in, tries to attack the apes and all that stuff, and you get this battle at towards the third act of the movie and all that. So it's kind of an interesting movie, to be honest. It definitely is interesting. I was kind of at least engaged for the most part in watching this movie, but it's definitely not on, like, the tier of some of these other Planet of the Apes movies, but it still was kind of a enjoyable watch, at least. And we get to Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And like I was saying before, a lot of these original Planet of Apes movies from the late 60s to the early 70s were all first-time watch. So with this movie, it was definitely interesting on the dynamic that they had in this movie, to where you basically have this movie taking place about, I think it was about, they said about 20 years after the third movie, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Basically about 20 years after that, Caesar is basically into his adulthood as an ape. And you see how this world, this futuristic world, at least, is kind of being. You know, there's this talk about this virus that basically took out the dogs and cats, and you know, basically your pet type animals in the world. So they relied on apes to become their more pets or servants of in ways, and kind of take that you know, fill that void and all that. So it was kind of interesting dynamic to be able to see that, and then basically in this movie you see how Caesar doesn't like that. You know, he doesn't like it. This is basically showing his rise and his leadership to basically liberate the apes from all that. And it's a very interesting movie to be able to witness that. This definitely is a movie that is similar to like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the modern day movie that we got. And this definitely, I would say that Rise definitely takes some similarities from this movie, and you know, has it in their movie. So this one is definitely an interesting take and a very interesting watch on how we are able to see the character of Caesar progress, basically his rise to this leadership role and in the liberation of the apes. So it's very interesting watch on that spot. And getting into the number 6 spot is going to be Escape from the Planet of the Apes. This is the third installment in the original Planet of the Apes franchise. And with this one was definitely interesting. I remember watching this movie and being like the beginning part is very weird. Like this kind of, I mean, a lot of the movies are weird in this franchise, but this one is kind of weird to where it's like it kind of tells the events of the ending of the second Planet Apes. Beneath the Planet Apes, it kind of tells the events of like what happened afterwards. It doesn't really show us or anything like that. You know, basically it's saying like how the nuclear warhead went off and all that stuff, and you got the fade to black and all that. And then you have the three ape characters that come to, well, not necessarily Earth, but they actually time travel back to the 70s, and you don't even see that or how that happened. You don't know what happens. Basically, the way this movie starts, and it just comes across as like the movie starts, they're basically crash land. That's it. That's all we get. We don't see them go into the ship. We don't see them how they made the ship or how time travel was created or anything like that. They basically crash land into the 70s, and on Earth. Well, the whole place takes place on Earth anyway, but you know what I mean. They crash land into the 70s, and the way that this movie comes across is that it's very lighthearted. It's funny. This one was probably the most funniest movie in the Planet of the Apes franchise. Like I got a couple of chuckles out of me here and there, a couple laughs I got out of me. So this one is definitely more on the funny side a little bit, at least for the first two acts. Now the third act, when it comes to third act, is definitely a tonal change that I wasn't expecting. And the way that this third act plays out, it's very hard hitting, and especially when it comes to like the ending, is very hard hitting, and it's like, damn, I did not expect that. You know, you're giving me a movie that's all lighthearted and fun in the first two acts, and then you hit me hard with that third act, and it's like it becomes a chase movie, and it becomes just the way that movie ends is very hard hitting in the ending and all that. But I did enjoy this movie, honestly. To be honest, it does a lot for me, honestly, and I really did enjoy it. Like, it was definitely a pretty decent, watchable movie. I did like it, actually. And I just like the relationship between Zira and Cornelius, to where, you know, especially with Zira, she was definitely sassy in this one. It was kind of funny to be able to see her like that with her character. And, you know, just Cornelius and Roddy McDowell carries this franchise, or at least the earlier original movies franchise, on his back, where he's playing all these main characters and appearing in every single movie. So it's a very decent, pretty watchable movie that I actually did enjoy. And we get into the next one, and that is going to be the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Now with this one, I really did enjoy. This one is definitely on a right stepping, or a good starting point to this whole new whatever they want to do with it. If they want to do a trilogy or whatever continuation of the Planet of the Apes films, it's definitely a good stepping stone to be able to get future movies, and they're doing a good job with this movie so far. If you want to check out my full in-depth review on it, definitely go check it out on the channel. But with this movie is definitely some of the standouts from this movie was Proxima Caesar, who is basically the antagonist of the movie. Great performance there going on. You had a character like Raka, who is also another standout for me in this movie, to where he's this wise older ape, and he just has the truth. Like, he knows the truth of Caesar's words, and he tries to push that, continue that whole path with that. And then you had the young protagonist character of Noah, who's a likable character. I wouldn't say he's as strong as Caesar, but over the next couple movies, you could see how he could become a more likable, a more stronger type of character and protagonists in these movies. And with this movie, I really did enjoy a lot of things they were able to do with it. I think it's a good continuation of the modern day trilogy that we got, and whatever they decide to do in the future with these movies, it's definitely a good stepping stone into getting other movies. I think they really did a good job with this movie, and just the performances, the motion capture, the way the effects are, they just look amazing in this movie. So they did a really good job with this movie that I actually did enjoy. And we get into the next spot, and that is going to be the original 1968, I believe it was 68, Planet of the Apes movie. So with this movie, like I said, this one was definitely a first time watch, at least from, sitting down watching it from beginning to end in one sitting for me. And with this movie, it definitely is a impact. I can see how this movie made an impact back when it came out during the 60s. And even though probably a majority of people know the ending or the big reveal and all that, it's still impactful in this movie. Like the way you're watching this movie and the way you see this journey that the main character goes on, Charlton Heston's character goes on through discovering, basically crash landing on this planet that he doesn't think it's Earth. But, crash landing on this planet, his journey from discovering the apes and going through all that, going through being captured and slavery and all that things, all this
Your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
stuff that's happening throughout the movie, and to be able to, by the end, be able to go on his own and make that discovery at the very end. And it's still impactful. That ending is still impactful. And that really comes down to the story and the performances in this movie, to where you can still feel that impact, even though you already know the reveal, even though you already know what's going to happen. It's still impactful within the movie of watching it, and that goes to the movie itself, to where the way they're able to craft the story and have these performances from the actors and all that, and be able to show that reveal at the very end and still be impactful is amazing and awesome. And I think it's just a great movie. Honestly, I enjoyed watching this movie, at least for the first time in a way. But it's a great movie. It's definitely a great movie. I can see why people speak highly of this movie a lot, and why people still go back to this movie and watch it and still just say how this is their favorite in the franchise and all that stuff. So I can see all those reasons why people will say that. So this was definitely a great movie. And we get into the number 3 spot, and for me it's going to be Rise of the Planet of the Apes. With this one, this is such a great starting point. I was definitely cautious on when this one first came out, and watching this, because my previous previous experience with the franchise of Planet of the Apes was watching that original 2001 remake with Mark Wahlberg and just not really liking that movie. And then this movie was coming out, you had James Franco in here, Andy Serkis doing motion capture, and I was just cautious on and kind of indifferent towards this movie before it came out and before watching it, to where are they really able to put out something great. And I changed my mind as soon as I watched this movie. They did such an amazing job with this movie, the way they're able to have the motion capture performances in this movie led by Andy Serkis, and being able to do the technology that they had, to where the motion capture, the tracking dots that they have, and Andy Serkis just acting his ass off in this movie with the motion capture, and be able to portray those emotions, portray those different feelings and everything on screen just through motion capture, and you're able to feel it even just through his performance. And it's amazing. And all the other modern day movies in the Planet of the Apes franchise are amazing, to where they're able to do all these motion capture performances. But to have this one as the starting point and just go up from here is amazing on what they're able to do. This movie is I just love this movie. I love this movie. I love the trilogy, the modern day trilogy that we have. It's an amazing trilogy overall. And upon this most recent rewatch, I was able to find a couple Easter eggs that leads to the actual original Planet of the Apes film, to where you had a headline for a space exploration. You had a newspaper headline to where it was like lost in space, one of the spaceships got lost in space. So they were laying that kind of groundwork and having those little Easter eggs to the original movie that they were going to come across probably in the future and all that stuff. But I love this movie. It's amazing. One of my favorites, and I can't get over this movie. It's amazing. Now we get into the number 2 spot. I know this might be a little controversial, but I'm going to have to go with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Now with this one, and y'all can already guess what number 1 is going to be for me. This is like neck and neck with these two top movies. Neck and neck. The reason why I put the number one movie at the top is because it did something slightly better, not better. It did something a little different for me upon this recent rewatch, and it's just I had to put it up just slightly above Dawn. But when it comes to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, this was a masterpiece. I love this movie. I remember going to the theater to watch the movie after watching that first Rise of the Planet of the Apes movie, and I remember watching this one and be able to have Matt Reeves directing this movie, have his certain style of directing and his storytelling, and this movie just shines. Like, this movie is amazing. It's amazing. This is one of the reasons why I love this modern day trilogy and why it's one of my favorites, is because this movie does such amazing things with these characters, this story. Everything in this movie is just knocking on all cylinders, and it's just going hardcore and everything into this story. The story is just amazing, to where you're caring about these ape characters, to where it's like just the way that they're able to have these motion capture performances go on, the way that you're able to just be invested in these characters, and like they're not even human characters, they're ape characters, but you're still able to be invested with these characters. And you had the dynamic and opposing forces between Caesar and Koba going on in this movie, and Koba is just an amazing villain, an antagonist in this movie, and the way that you're able to see him go against Caesar, butt heads against Caesar, and be able to basically, he is the villain, he's the antagonist of this movie, and you're able to see that and develop, and it develops the more and more you get into this movie and continue to watch it, and you're able to just see that come across on screen, and be able to have Caesar continue his story. He has a family now of his own, and be able to see everything that he's struggling with and everything he has to do as leader of this whole ape clan that he has, and being able to protect them, be a leader to them, and just progress their species forward, and be able to have all that in this story, in this movie. And it just comes across to where it's like, even though this movie is the majority of showing just apes on screen and them communicating, them how they're living together and all that, and what their drive is with their characters, you're able just to connect with that still. And on the other side, you have the humans who are on this other side, and you get a little bit with them. You got Gary Oldman, who's a good character in there. The other human characters that we got in here are to where they're just trying to survive. And you have that one character, Toby Kebbell, who actually actually plays Koba, does the motion capture for Koba and all that, which is kind of interesting. But the way that you're able to have those characters all in there too, it's a very interesting movie. I love this movie, really do. And just upon this recent rewatch, it just made me fall in love with it all over again. And I just love this movie so much. It does such an amazing job. But we get into the number one spot, and that for me, War of the Planet of the Apes. And I know a lot of people probably wouldn't put this as their number one. I know a lot of people would put Dawn as their number one. But like I said, I recently rewatched all these movies in the franchise, and when it came to this most recent rewatch, going into this rewatch, honestly, without watching any of these movies and going into this ranking video, if I didn't rewatch them, I probably would have put Dawn, just from memory at least. I would probably would have put Dawn at the top and put War as number two. But with this most recent rewatch, the War for the Planet of the Apes just did something different for me upon this most recent rewatch. So I had to put it at number one, because just slightly, like I said, these movies were neck and neck, but when it came to War, it just did something a little bit different for me. That's why I had to put it slightly above Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I was just so engaged with this movie, and the way that it's basically the ending to this modern day trilogy that we have, and it just did so much for me this time around on this most recent rewatch. I was so engaged in what was going on, engaged with the story, and engaged with these characters. The way that you have Caesar on this basically revenge and war path to go after Woody Harrelson's character after he basically killed his wife and his son. And whenever that happened, that scene happens, it hits you hard. Hits you so hard, in the way that you see the physical and emotional performance from Andy Serkis, where he's playing Caesar in this motion capture performance. And I gotta say, god damn, man, Andy Serkis definitely deserves some kind of award or Oscar or something for his performances in this movie. Like, he does amazing and job in these movies, and just the way he's able to progress motion capture in general with his performances in these movies is such an amazing. He does such an amazing and epic job with the motion capture in these movies. But like I was saying, the way you're able to just get that hard-hitting scene in the beginning and see the emotional and physical performance of Andy Serkis in the motion capture role of Caesar, it hits you hard, man. It hits you hard. Definitely hits you hard. And you're able to feel for his character and see why he goes on this revenge and warpath to go after Woody Harrelson's character. And you see how he is like, he just goes on his path. Like, he is like, he doesn't care how it ends. He doesn't care what happens next. He just knows that he has to go after Woody Harrelson's character. And Woody Harrelson plays such an amazing villain and antagonist in this movie, to where it's like, you know, he's playing this general, and it just comes across so well, to where you just kind of see where he's coming from. You kind of see why he's doing this. And I'm not going to say you necessarily agree with him or anything like that, but you can see why he's doing all this. He thinks like his way is the right way, and you can see why he thinks that. So it just goes to show, like, you know, even though he's the villain and you're like, oh, he's the villain, no, you actually feel why he's doing this. He tells you the story of why he's doing all this, or and you're able to see why he's doing this, and why you see, you know, you're able to see why he thinks he's in the right here. So you're able to see that, and it just comes across as the story being told. You know, Matt Reeves directs this movie and does such an amazing job with this movie, and just the way you're able to just see the way this movie comes together, the way it caps off this modern day trilogy, and it just leaves off at the ending. It feels like it leaves off on kind of a bright note for the future of the Apes, and it just is so well done with this movie. I enjoy this movie so much. I love this movie, and upon most recent rewatch, honestly, I really felt like watching it for a second time just a couple of days after. It's just an amazing movie, honestly, and it really did something different for me upon this recent rewatch. So with that being said, that is how I'm going to be ranking all of the Planet of the Apes films in the franchise. Definitely let me know down in the comments below, how would you rank all of these movies? Definitely would like to hear your thoughts on it. Well, that is going to do it for this video. Hopefully y'all all enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe and turn notifications on so you know when I post another video. Hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you on the next one.